My name is Peter Lawson. Back in the logging camps, they used to call me Pete the Woodsman. In that house, though, I was just hey, or you. We lived in an old timber cabin at the very edge of the Montana backwoods, the kind of place where pine trees grow so tall they swallow the sun by noon. Where winter doesn't visit, it settles in. My wife, Elena, believed her mother more than she believed God, and her mother, Mary Whitmore, ruled that house like a queen in a crumbling fortress. That evening I walked into the mudroom and felt it immediately. Wrong. The air was too still, too tight. Inside the house it was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming like a distant engine. I pushed the door open. My son Tommy was standing on the hardwood floor, on dried, split peas. He's 6. His legs are thin, his knees already red and trembling. Tears clung to his lashes but didn't fall. He was afraid to let them. Towering over him stood Mary. Her black shawl had slipped down her forehead. Her face looked carved from old bark. Her eyes burned.
"Stand there and think," she rasped, "until the filth leaves you."
Something boiled inside my chest. "What the hell are you doing?" My voice came out low and heavy. "Get up, Tommy." He flinched, but he didn't move.
"Dad,"
he whispered, staring at the floor.
"I just said the word but. Everyone says it at school."
Mary turned toward me slowly. Her face hardened.
"Vulgarity is the devil's seed," she said. "I raised my daughter with discipline. I'll raise my grandson the same. Stay out of women's business."
From the kitchen, Elena stepped out. She didn't even look at our son. Her face wore that blank, obedient expression I hated more than shouting.
"Mom's right, Pete," she said quietly. "She knows how to raise a child. Tommy has to understand there's a price for every word."
I crossed the room in 2 strides, lifted my boy off that floor. The peas scattered across the boards like tiny bones. Tommy buried his face in my shoulder, shaking. "He's not standing like that again," I said, looking straight into my wife's eyes. Something shifted in her. Her posture straightened. Her voice changed. Cold. Detached. "If you don't like how things work here, Peter," she said, "you can leave. This is our home. You came here with 1 backpack. Don't forget that." I glanced toward the window. Outside, dusk was sinking into the trees. The forest felt close. Too close. For a second, I had the strangest feeling, like something was watching us from beyond the dark trunks, something that fed on tears inside warm houses. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. From the kitchen came Mary's muttering. Endless prayers mixed with curses whispered in my direction. Hypocrite, I thought. I'd spent a year at a seminary when I was younger. I knew what prayer sounded like, and that wasn't it. I turned onto my side and felt something pressing against my chest under my shirt. I reached inside and pulled out my cross. Simple aluminum, worn thin. My mother had put it around my neck before I left for the army. "Wear it," she'd whispered. "You were baptized in it. It'll keep the dark away." Years in logging camps and wilderness jobs had scraped the red enamel off its tiny edges. I squeezed it in my fist. The metal was warm. It held my heat, my anger, my love for my son. Mary bowed before her icons in the next room, but there was no light in her faith. Her belief felt heavy, rotting, like that house.
Just get through the winter, I thought. Just protect Tommy. I slipped the cross back under my shirt. This time, the metal felt cold. Morning came hard and white. Frost painted the windows in jagged veins. I didn't eat. I grabbed my shotgun, my shell belt, and stepped outside. My dog, Ranger, a scruffy mutt with more heart than breeding, was already waiting at the porch. He whined, tail thumping the boards. Snow screamed under my boots as I headed toward the old clear-cut where rabbits liked to feed. The forest greeted me with silence. Real silence. The kind that cleans your head. Out here, there were no lies, no manipulation, no whispering poison into a child's ear. Out here, you were either hunter or prey. At home, I had become something worse. Unnecessary. Ranger froze suddenly, ears up, nose twitching. Good boy. I slipped off my mitten and felt the cold metal of the trigger. This was honest. Just me, the dog, and an animal that wanted to live. A white blur exploded from behind a fallen log. Rabbit. Ranger lunged. I lifted the gun, tracked the movement, pulled the trigger. The shot shattered the stillness. Snow fell from the branches. The rabbit dropped. Still. Ranger circled it proudly, tail wagging. On the walk back, my heart felt lighter. I'd skin it, stew it with cream. Tommy's eyes would light up. Maybe even Mary's stone heart would thaw a little at the table. Maybe. The sky was turning blue-gray by the time I reached the house. The sauna was hot and breathing steam. I dropped the rabbit in the mudroom, leaned the shotgun by the wall, and stepped inside the heat. An hour later, I came out clean, alive, and froze. My shotgun was lying in the snow under the porch light, thrown there. My rabbit lay beside it, split open, gutted, left to freeze. I felt something inside me tear. I stormed inside. Mary stood by the icons. Elena sat in the corner, mending a sock. "What did you do?" I demanded. Mary turned slowly. "Blood does not cross this threshold during fasting," she said calmly. "You brought death into this house." "What fasting? What are you talking about?" "Elena," Mary said softly, "explain to him." My wife stood. "You ruin everything you touch, Pete," she said. "Mom did what was right." I stared at her. I didn't recognize her anymore. I walked back outside. Picked up the shotgun. The metal burned with cold. Ranger whined at the rabbit's body, and somewhere in the trees, I could swear something was pleased. I didn't argue. That was the worst part. I cleaned the shotgun in silence, locked it in the cabinet, left the rabbit in the snow for the crows. I lay down fully dressed on the narrow bed in the side room and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I listened. The house had its own rhythm. Floorboards creaked. Pipes clicked. The old refrigerator hummed like distant machinery. Then the clock struck midnight. And something changed. A door opened. Soft. Careful. I heard Tommy's sleepy voice, then heavy footsteps. They brought him into the kitchen. I slid from the bed and pressed my ear to the thin wall. Mary's voice was syrupy now. "Eat, sweetheart. Eat your oatmeal. You need strength." "Where's Dad?" Tommy asked. Silence. Then Elena's voice, flat, emotionless. "You don't have a dad, Tommy." My breath stopped. "What?" Tommy's voice trembled. "Peter is just a man who lives here," Mary continued gently. "He had nowhere to go. Your real father was a hero. Died before you were born." We didn't want to hurt you." The floor felt like it dropped beneath me. "He's not your blood," Elena added. "He's just passing through." My fists clenched so hard my nails cut skin. They weren't just fighting me. They were erasing me, rewriting my son's world. I heard Tommy whisper, "But he takes me fishing." Mary chuckled softly. "Anyone can pretend." I nearly kicked the door down right then, but I didn't, because something inside me said, "Wait, this wasn't just cruelty. This was methodical, planned." The next morning, I didn't go hunting. I went to the workshop. The settlement, Cedar Hollow, sat squeezed between a mountain ridge and a half-frozen river. You didn't live there. You endured it. The property had belonged to Mary's late husband, Marcus Whitmore. Strange man.
People used to say he was brilliant. Others said he'd lost his mind toward the end. The workshop stood apart from the house, thick larch wood, hard as iron now. Inside smelled of sawdust and old oil and secrets. The yard was cluttered with Marcus's legacy. 2 massive barns, one held a decaying wagon with iron-rimmed wheels that looked like the skeleton of some prehistoric beast. The other was full of carved wooden masks, faces twisted in agony, animal-human hybrids, things with too many eyes. Why would a man carve so many? For what? But the real secret was beneath the house, the cellar. From the outside, it looked like nothing, a small dirt mound with a wooden hatch. But inside, it went deeper than a cellar should. I'd once gone down for potatoes and shined a flashlight past the shelves. There were tunnels, actual tunnels, carved into earth and stone, like catacombs. At the far end, a steel door, heavy, industrial, with a spiral lock. I'd asked Elena about the key once. She went pale. "Don't go there," she whispered. "Old grief sleeps down there." Old grief. That phrase had stayed with me. Now, standing in the yard with frost biting my face, I looked at that mound differently. If they were pushing me out, if they were rewriting my existence, then I needed leverage, truth. Whatever was behind that steel door, Mary was afraid of it. That meant it mattered. I grabbed a crowbar and a sledgehammer. If a door was locked, it meant something valuable was behind it, or something dangerous. Either way, I needed to see. I stepped toward the cellar hatch and heard the crunch of snow behind me. I turned. Mary stood by the barn, wrapped in her dark coat, watching. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't shocked. It was resigned. "Don't go down there, Peter," she said quietly. "Marcus made it clear. That door stays closed." "What's in it?" I asked. She didn't blink. "Something you won't understand." I lifted the crowbar. "Try me." She took a slow breath.
"Elena's waiting inside. We need to finish this."
The house was hot when I walked in, too hot. Elena sat at the table, a blank sheet of paper in front of her, pen resting neatly beside it. Tommy was nowhere in sight. "Let's not drag this out," she said calmly. My stomach tightened. "I'm filing for divorce." No hesitation, no tears. "We tried," she continued. "You never became one of us. You're a woodsman, Pete, a drifter. This isn't your world." "You're poisoning my son," I said quietly. Her eyes sharpened. "He stays with me." "You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted. "This is my family's land, my house, my support system. You're a seasonal laborer with a gun and a dog,
Judges like stability. Mary stood by the stove, watching. 2 days, she said. Pack your tools, take your things, leave Tommy's mind alone. Soon he won't remember you clearly anyway. That sentence chilled me more than the snow outside. Won't remember you clearly. What did that mean? They weren't just planning to remove me physically. They were dismantling me in his memory, piece by piece. I looked toward Tommy's closed bedroom door. My heart twisted. Fine, I said slowly. 2 days. But in my mind, there was only one thing. The steel door. If Marcus had buried something, and Mary feared it, that was my only card left to play. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I would go down, and I would open it. I waited until the house went completely still. No footsteps, no whispers, no floorboards shifting. Just the low hum of the heater. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my headlamp, the crowbar, and moved through the dark like I was back in the woods tracking wounded game. The cellar hatch groaned when I lifted it. Cold air rolled out. But beneath the usual damp earth smell, there was something else. Sweet, rotten, metallic, like old blood left too long in the sun.
I climbed down. The dirt walls were slick with moisture. Wooden shelves lined with jars of preserved vegetables, potatoes in crates. Normal. Until it wasn't. I moved past the storage racks and turned the corner where I remembered the narrow opening behind them. It was still there. A gap carved into earth. Man-made. Not recent. The beam of my headlamp cut through dust and floating particles. The tunnel walls weren't rough excavation. They had been reinforced in places with timber, measured, deliberate. Marcus hadn't just dug for storage. He had built something. I stepped deeper. The air grew heavier, thicker. The tunnel forked. One side sloped down. The other led straight to the steel door. Even before I reached it, I could smell it clearly now. Decay. Chemical preservation. Iron. The door stood in the earth like a vault entrance. Industrial steel. Spiral lock wheel. I expected resistance, but when I grabbed the handle and twisted, it moved. Easily. Too easily. The door opened with a long metallic groan. The smell hit me full force. Ugh! I gagged. My headlamp swept across the chamber. And what it revealed was not a storage room, not a bunker. It was a shrine. Symbols covered the walls, burned into wood panels, painted in dark red pigment, carved directly into stone. Goat heads, elongated figures, spiral patterns weaving into tree roots. This wasn't Christianity, wasn't folklore. This was something older, something that didn't belong in books. I stepped forward, and the beam of light landed on the first body. Marcus Whitmore, or what was left of him. He lay in a carved stone recess, arranged, carefully, arms folded across his chest, skin yellowed and dried tight to bone, his eye sockets empty. But the expression frozen on his face wasn't peaceful. It was terror. Raw. I staggered backward and nearly dropped the crowbar. No, I whispered. Marcus had been declared dead a year ago. Heart failure. Closed casket. Mary had said the body was too damaged to display. I swung the light right. There were more alcoves, more shapes. My heart slammed so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. In the second recess, I saw her. Elena. Her body, cold, gray. 2 weeks gone at least. Her chest cavity marked with symbols cut into skin. Mary lay beside her in another niche, her mouth sewn shut with thick black thread. The room tilted. If they were here, if they were dead, then who? I heard it, above me, from the house, a door slamming, Ranger's bark outside. But it wasn't barking. It was screaming, the kind of sound a dog makes only once in its life. Then it cut off. Silence. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor overhead, slow, measured. Tommy's voice drifted down faintly through the boards. "Dad, you down there?" My blood turned to ice. Then another voice joined his, Mary's, but not the brittle, harsh tone I knew. This one was soft, almost amused. "Peter," it called. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." The steel door behind me creaked. I hadn't touched it. I killed the headlamp instantly. Darkness swallowed everything. My breath sounded too loud. I pressed myself against the stone wall, crowbar raised. Above me, something dragged across the floorboards. Then came Elena's voice, gentle, almost loving. "You should have left when we offered." Offered? Offered what? To let me go? To let me survive? Tommy's voice again. "Daddy, come up. Grandma says you found Grandpa." But the tone wasn't right. Too calm, too controlled. I realized something then. Marcus hadn't died. Not the way they said. He had tried something, and it had worked, but not the way he intended. The steel door behind me began to close, slowly, grinding. I lunged forward and jammed the crowbar into the hinge before it could seal. The metal screamed. The voices above fell silent. Complete silence. Then soft footsteps started descending the cellar stairs. 1, 2, 3. Each step deliberate. I could hear breathing now, wet, thick. And when it reached the bottom, I saw the outline in the faint spill of moonlight from the hatch. It wore Mary's shape, but it stood too tall. Its shoulders were wrong, bent in angles no human spine should bend, and its head tilted too far to one side. "Peter," it said, and the voice layered. "Mary, Elena, something deeper. You opened the wrong door." I didn't think. I ran, up the cellar stairs 2 at a time. The thing wearing Mary's shape lunged after me. It didn't run like a human. Its limbs snapped forward in sudden jerks, like a marionette yanked by invisible strings. I slammed the cellar hatch open and burst into the mudroom. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No lights except the faint yellow glow from the living room. Ranger lay near the door, curled like he was sleeping, but the snow beneath him was black. My stomach twisted. "Tommy?" I called. My voice echoed strangely. The living room light flickered, and there he was, sitting on the floor, back to me, playing with his wooden blocks, stacking them slowly, carefully. "Buddy?" I said, stepping forward. He turned his head. Too slow, too smooth. And his eyes weren't right. They were older, deep, measuring. Behind him, from the hallway shadows, 2 shapes stepped out. They weren't pretending anymore. Elena's skin was stretched tight over something wrong underneath. Her arms hung too long. Fingers tapered into sharp, bone-white hooks. Mary's back arched unnaturally, her jaw unhinged slightly as if testing its range. They moved in sync, guarding. "Welcome back," Tommy said. But it wasn't Tommy's voice. It was layered, gravelly, male, familiar. "Marcus."
You always were curious, Peter. My knees nearly buckled. You're dead, I whispered. The boy smiled. Death is just clothing. He stood up, climbed onto the chair to make himself taller.
I told Savely I'd find a better vessel, he continued casually. Young blood carries further, adapts faster. My heart pounded so violently I could barely hear. You dug the tunnels, I said. You built that shrine. Built? He laughed. No, I uncovered it. The forest had it long before me. I simply fed it. Fed. I thought of the animals, the missing hikers, the rumors. Those things downstairs. My failed attempts, Marcus said calmly. Flesh reshaped imperfectly. But this one, he tapped his own chest. This one is lineage. The creatures behind him shifted, twitching. Let him go, I said. My voice broke. That's my son. Marcus tilted his head. He's inside, for now, watching, learning. When he's done being useful, I'll move again. Something in me snapped. I tore the cross from my neck, stepped forward. You don't belong here. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. You still believe in that? I pressed the aluminum cross against Tommy's forehead. The reaction was immediate. A hiss, like meat hitting a hot pan. Smoke curled upward. Tommy screamed, but the scream layered. Multiple voices tearing at once. The creatures lunged. Elena's warped form swiped at me. Savely's shotgun roared from behind. The blast tore through her shoulder, sending her crashing into the wall. Savely stood in the doorway, both barrels smoking. Move! He shouted. Mary's creature crawled across the ceiling, joints popping grotesquely. I held the cross firm. Out! I roared. The symbol glowed faintly from heat. Tommy's small hands clawed at my wrists. Then his body arched violently. The room shook, windows cracked, the lights burst. The cross burned so hot I smelled skin searing. A black vapor poured from Tommy's mouth, screaming, twisting. Savely fired again. The creatures convulsed as the vapor tore free from the child's body. It hovered midair, shapeless.
Horned, ancient. Then the cross flared bright, and the thing shattered like smoke in wind. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Tommy collapsed into my arms, breathing. Just breathing. The creatures that had worn Elena and Mary collapsed into heaps of slack flesh. Empty. I fell to my knees, clutching my son. It's over, Savely whispered. But his voice didn't sound convinced. Outside, the forest groaned, like something had lost a piece of itself. We left that same night. There was no discussion, no mourning, no looking back. Savely drove us out through an old logging trail that barely qualified as a road. Snow swallowed the tires. The headlights carved 2 weak tunnels through the dark. I held Tommy in the passenger seat. He slept, just slept. Like a child who had cried too hard and exhausted himself. His breathing was soft, even, human. I kept checking just to be sure. We didn't speak until the trees began thinning and the highway lights appeared like distant stars. Savely finally broke the silence. You can't stay, he said. I know. They don't always die when you think they do. I tightened my grip on Tommy. It burned, I said. It screamed. Savely didn't answer. He just kept driving. When we reached the county line, I didn't look back. I was afraid I'd see something standing between the trees, watching. A year passed. We moved 300 miles south to a small industrial town. Concrete, factories, noise. No forest. No endless tree lines swallowing the horizon.
I got a job in a furniture workshop sanding oak slabs 12 hours a day. Tommy started first grade. He didn't talk much, didn't laugh much either. But the nightmare stopped. He stopped waking up screaming, stopped staring at the walls. He just became quiet. Sometimes I'd catch him looking out the apartment window at the smoggy skyline, like he missed something, or something missed him. I never took the cross off again. It stayed against my chest even in the shower. I didn't trust over. I trusted distance. That evening I stayed late at work. Big order came in, solid oak dining sets. By the time I walked home, my hands were raw from sanding and my back ached. But I was in a good mood. I'd bought Tommy a building kit he'd been asking about. Bright red box, plastic pieces, normal things. I unlocked the apartment door quietly and froze. The air inside was thick with cigarette smoke. I don't smoke, never have. From the kitchen came laughter. Female, rough, too loud. My pulse slowed, not quickened, slowed. The way it does when your body decides panic won't help. I stepped into the kitchen. Tommy sat at the table, 7 years old now. In front of him, an open bottle of vodka, half empty. 2 women sat beside him, cheap makeup, smudged mascara, dead eyes. They leaned toward him like he was something powerful, like he was someone important. Tommy held a shot glass in his small fingers, steady, too steady. "Tommy?" I said. The plastic bag slipped from my hand. The building kit hit the floor. He turned his head slowly, his eyes met mine, and I saw it. Yellow, faint, but there. He smiled, not like a boy, like a man who had been waiting. "Oh," he said. The voice wasn't fully Marcus anymore, but it wasn't gone either. "Look who finally came home." My hand flew to my chest, the cross still there. Tommy laughed, and the women laughed with him, high, shrill, insect-like. "Don't start with that shiny thing again, Pete," he said casually, tossing back the vodka and not even flinching. "You really thought I left?" The room felt smaller, tighter. "I let you take me," he continued. "You drove me out of the forest, into the city, more people, more flesh, more options." He stepped onto the chair, and the light behind him stretched his shadow along the wall. For a split second, that shadow grew horns, clawed hands, branching antlers like twisted tree limbs. "You burned one doorway," he said softly, "but I am not a doorway." The women turned their heads toward me at the same time, too synchronized. "You carried me here yourself," he whispered. "And now I don't need the forest." The smoke in the room thickened, or maybe it was just my vision narrowing. Tommy stepped down from the chair, walked toward me, each step slow, confident. "This is better," he said. "So many souls, so many homes." He stopped inches away, looked up. His eyes flickered between yellow and brown. For just a moment, just a flicker, I saw my son, terrified, trapped. "Dad?" The words slipped out faintly. Then his face tightened again. The smile returned. "Let's not pretend we don't enjoy this game," he said. Outside the apartment window, a siren wailed somewhere in the city. Distant, unrelated, life going on, normal. But I knew the truth. The forest hadn't followed us. It had expanded. I didn't move, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I understood something now. This thing didn't win by force. It won by patience, by inheritance, by blood.
Tommy stood inches from me, his face calm, too calm. The two women watched like obedient dogs waiting for a command. "You can't burn me out every time," he said quietly. "That cross hurt. It inconvenienced me, that's all." My fingers tightened around the aluminum pendant. It wasn't glowing now. It wasn't warm. Just metal. Ordinary. "You think this is about faith?" he continued. "It's about invitation." The word hit me harder than anything else. Invitation. I thought back. Marcus digging, feeding, praying to something older than prayer, opening something, welcoming something. Then I remembered something else. Tommy's scream when I pressed the cross to his skin. Not the layered voice, the small one underneath. Dad, it had been real.
"You're not fully in control," I said slowly. Tommy's eyes narrowed, a flicker, barely visible, but there. The women shifted uneasily. The smoke in the room trembled slightly. "You needed lineage," I continued. "You said it yourself. You needed blood to anchor." Tommy smiled again, but thinner this time. "Blood is efficient." "And blood can reject," I said. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was calculating. The thing inside my son was thinking. We stood there like that for a long second. Then I did the only thing I hadn't tried. I dropped the cross, let it hit the floor. Clink. Tommy's eyes widened just slightly. Not fear, surprise. I stepped forward and pulled him into my arms. He stiffened. The women hissed. But I didn't stop. I wrapped him tight, held him like I used to when he was 5 and afraid of thunder. "You're my son," I whispered into his hair. "You don't belong to the forest. You don't belong to him." Tommy trembled. His small hands twitched against my chest. The air pressure in the room shifted. The lights flickered. The women began to distort, their faces stretching, glitching between human and something else. "You can't separate us," the layered voice growled from inside him. "I don't have to," I said. "You need him to stay. He doesn't need you." The first scream wasn't loud. It was internal. Tommy's body convulsed once. The shadow behind him jerked violently against the wall. I held tighter. "Remember the river," I whispered. "Remember Ranger. Remember the rabbit stew you were excited for." His breathing became ragged. The yellow flickered hard in his eyes. Then, for one full second, they were just brown. Pure brown. "Dad," he gasped. And that was enough. The room exploded into movement. The two women collapsed instantly like puppets with cut strings. The smoke spiraled upward violently, forming that horned silhouette for a split second, and then fractured. Not burned, not destroyed, scattered, like ash in wind. The apartment lights went out. Total darkness. My ears rang. When the emergency hallway lights flickered on seconds later, Tommy was limp in my arms. Breathing. Just breathing. The vodka bottle had shattered on the floor. The women lay unconscious. Human. Just human. I sank to my knees, held him, and waited. For anything. For claws. For whispers. For yellow eyes. Nothing came. Weeks passed. The women vanished from the building after that night. No police report, no record. Tommy recovered slowly. He didn't remember everything, just pieces. Nightmares of trees growing through walls, voices calling his name in wind. But the yellow never returned. Not fully. Sometimes, when the light hits his eyes at a certain angle, I think I see a hint of it. But maybe that's just trauma, or paranoia. I still wear the cross, not because I believe it's magic, but because it reminds me of something. This wasn't about ancient gods or forest spirits. It was about ownership, about what you allow to claim your blood. Marcus opened a door, and something answered, but it needed permission to stay. And that permission was fear, submission, isolation. I stopped isolating. Tommy and I talk now, about everything, about anger, about lies, about manipulation. I don't let silence grow roots in our house, because silence is where things like that take shape. Sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet, I swear I hear something far away. Not in the trees, there are no trees here, but in the spaces between buildings, like wind moving through concrete, waiting, searching. But it doesn't knock anymore, and if it ever does, it won't find a door open.